Diversity is not our biggest strength. Focus on actionable skills, learning actionable skills and applying them rather than believing that someone is out to truly change your life and help you.
What happens if the next round of elections doesn't go in the right direction and things continue to decline in Britain?
This is a hacker's dream. If you have all of your information sat in one place, one simple hack and someone can have everything. As part of the Online Safety Act, it's effectively a censorship measure. There are professional fields that are extremely necessary when it comes to veterinarians, when it comes to doctors, engineering. These are things that, of course, you need to study additionally to be able to gain the qualifications required. Realistically, if you were to work and put the effort in, there is a life for you.
Never say wasted. A good cigar can be wasted on a good man.
True.
A powerful voice for Gen Z Britain with 250,000 followers just told me Britain has one election left before it's over. Ben Pearce has built one of the fastest growing political platforms in the UK. Verified 200,000 followers, delivering news the mainstream media would not touch, and absolutely killing it at 22 years old. And he's doing it with his real name attached in a country that's jailing people for Facebook posts. Halfway through the cigar, he breaks down how Britain sold all its gold, closed its last steel factory, and is now pushing digital IDs that would give the government control over every transaction you make. He connected the dots I'd never seen before. What struck me the most is that he's not bitter. He's not dooming. He genuinely loves his country and believes there's still a chance to turn it around, but only if people wake up in time. That kind of honesty only comes out when you're committed to 90 minutes together. No quick exits, no performance. We cover digital IDs, the welfare math that doesn't work, why young British men have no political home, and the one truth he says would fix Britain if people just accepted it. This is Breaking Cigars with Ben Pearce.
Cool. Ben, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
3 different cigars for you today. The first one is Villa Vieja, an all Nicaraguan Puro. And usually this is my go-to. The second one I have, and it's the one that usually catches the eye, it's The Leaf by Oscar Valadere, and it's Corojo. And the interesting thing about this one is actually a mix. I think it's a mix of Ecuadorian, Nicaraguan, and one other country, but it's got very unique marketing spin to it where it has a leaf wrapped around it. I have a buddy of mine who is very good at rolling cigars. And he actually ended up taking this leaf and rolled it into a mini cigarello. And another buddy of mine smoked it, and he said it's the best little cigarello he's ever smoked. So this one's a very interesting one. And then the third one is called the Padilla. It's also a Nicaraguan Puro. And you're gonna see underneath here, it says Barcelona.
Yep.
And it picks up from Spanish traditions. And I think it's a more recent one, but this is light body, medium body, and full body cigar. All 3 mixes on the table. Which one?
Definitely more of a light body for myself.
Okay.
As someone who's still getting into the cigar industry specifically, still working my way around what I actually prefer, I think something more full body would probably be wasted on me as someone who wouldn't know exactly what I'm tasting and the different notes inside. So for sure, probably the light body for myself.
Perfect.
Fantastic, appreciate it, thank you.
I think I'll go for the medium body today, the Corojo. Either Corojo or Corojo.
It looks beautiful wrapped in the leaf as well as it is.
Yes, and my buddy usually goes for these ones here. I don't think I've ever had this specific one. I've had a whole bunch in my humidor, and usually the boys end up smoking them. But what is your typical experience with cigars? Do you smoke once a week, once a month, once a year?
Yeah, mine's more of an occasional smoke if I am going to smoke. I typically smoke around celebrations, maybe milestones, more as a treat as opposed to a regular occurrence or something that I do out of habit. But then again, I believe that's because I'm not very well versed in what I'm smoking, and therefore I believe that nicer cigars are more wasted on me. Until at least I grow to find something that I prefer. But certainly for now, I think light body is best for me, especially as someone who doesn't smoke regularly.
Never say wasted. Good cigar can be wasted on a good man.
True.
And I have 3 different ways to cut here. And funny enough, I think the video that really took off between all the different shorts that I was putting on was the cutting method that I used and how I ruined one of the cigars in front of a CEO. and all the guys were typing in the chat, V-cut is the best, punch cut is the best, because it's tougher to mess up a cigar with either of these.
Yep.
I usually go for what's called the guillotine cut.
Just a straight cut.
Just a straight cut.
Myself too. I've never even heard of a punch cut, and I wouldn't even know where to begin with that small device.
And it gives, depending on the cut that you do, the cigar will actually have a different taste because the way it enters your mouth, the palate will interpret that cigar differently. But my go-to is usually a nice double-edge straight cut, and always just cutting off a small tip here and going for that.
Beautiful. Exclusive experience of me cutting a cigar. It's not something I typically do. Comes as part of the experience typically when you're out. But that isn't too bad at all.
Oh, and it does turn red. This one's fancy.
Beautiful.
But the thing about these lighters, it's actually, the way it turns red is there's a mineral in there that eventually burns out and gets used up as it burns. So it's not going to be red forever, but we can at least enjoy it while we have it.
And does the mineral add anything to the cigar specifically, or is it more just for the ambiance of the light coming through?
Just the ambiance. Yeah. It's there for the vibe.
There for the vibe. As to the experience, I suppose that's what a lot of cigars are for the most part, right? They add a different experience to a night.
And over the years, I've only been smoking for 3, but over the years it has been for me personally just the conversations that one has and the company that one has over the cigars, as opposed to be really focusing on the cigar and enjoying the cigar. But as you continue tasting certain foods, drinking certain drinks, breaking certain cigars, you tend to acquire a taste because you've seen enough to know what you like and you don't like. In my case, I usually go for kind of a stronger one. And there's an alternative to this leaf one called the Maduro. And a Maduro is like a stronger, full-body, darker leaf. And that's how you're able to tell the difference, between a lighter and a stronger cigar. It's usually by the color of the leaf that they use.
And do different bodied cigars typically have different flavors that come with them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's different chocolates, different nuts that people describe usually with the stronger ones. And then there's also ways to pair them with different alcohols. There's ways that people also infuse taste. There's also, yesterday we were hanging out with Brody after an event, and we were in the cigar lounge, and he offered me a smaller cigarillo, and it was actually, the tip of it was dipped into some sort of a sweetener, so it ended up changing the taste of the cigar. And I know a lot of people typically don't like that, but I enjoy a little bit of flavoring every once in a while.
Now, would I be able to taste, as someone who isn't very well versed with cigars, would I be able to taste the difference personally? Is it that much of a difference, or is it something that you pick up as you experience more cigars?
That's a good question. I would say at least between light, medium, and full body cigars, you're definitely going to be able to feel the hit of nicotine being stronger. And depending on which one of the 3 it is, you're going to taste different notes. Even a beginner can taste the difference. Where it gets tougher is, let's say you dive deeper into one of those 3, the tastes are going to be different, but it's going to be harder to describe. I remember I once took a bartending course. This was around 12 months ago. And it was once a week. It was 3 hours straight of just learning how to mix different drinks.
Beautiful.
And the crew of 10 that was with me were, quote unquote, studying to become barmen. And in my case, I was just a drink enjoyer. I like to host people at my place, and one of the nice things about hosting is you get to make people drinks. And that was my intention around taking that course. And one of the things that our barman coach said was, if you make a drink for someone and then you ask them about the taste and they say, oh, the taste is interesting. That's the worst thing they can say about a drink. That's the worst way to describe it, because it usually implies that someone doesn't like something. Whenever you taste a drink or taste a cigar, there are notes in it that are reminiscent of some sort of a taste or smell or memory. And then he proceeded to taste one of the gin and tonics that he made. and he described it as a wet sauna. And the crazy thing is, I could picture it as well. I tasted it after. I was like, damn, it does smell like a wet sauna. That's the funny thing. And the creativity, the storytelling behind the drink when it comes to being a barman is just as important as a barman that makes a good drink. Because you give it a whole new level when you do it with a certain presentation, with a certain marketing. When you mix the drinks, there's a certain way you put the bottles and the ingredients in front of the person. And then there's the flash towards mixing it,
The
pouring
garnish, everything else involved.
flipping it, shifting. It's a whole art.
And is that, you're clearly a man of experiences, therefore, because cigars you get an experience with. When you're hosting people, you get an experience with. Is that why you find yourself probably liking cigars as much as you do, and therefore you're trying to build a personal brand around the idea of cigars, because you're kind of that experienced type person?
That's a great question. I would say for me, I continuously found myself going to cigar lounges to network with people, and the best conversations I've ever had have been over cigars. And it seemed like such a natural fit to start diving deeper into the world of cigars, that it was a no-brainer for me to double down on it and just start doing content around it, just as a hobby, just something that I enjoyed, that I saw kind of a market gap in. But over these past few years, I noticed, hey, I'm now generally starting to enjoy cigars. It wasn't just at networking events when I was grabbing cigars. It's okay. It turned into a weekly ritual of, hey, let me go into the cigar lounge and grab a cigar and just work from my laptop for 3-4 hours.
Brilliant.
It became something that I enjoyed, but it all started with a conversation and a group of men where we'd be networking, and cigar is just one of those things that was in the background. And then it came again and again and again to me that, hey, it's a great ritual to partake in regularly, excluding the side effects, of course. It's a ritual.
And do you find that your ability to network has improved since you've learned more about cigars and the experience that comes with them? Because I imagine as someone who has more experience with cigars, it's a bit of an effortless process. You know, you walk into a cigar lounge, you know what you like, you can kind of just ask immediately for exactly what you like. The cigar man will bring one over, and it will give you the experience as it is, and it must feel for those around you almost a comfortable element to it, because they know, oh, you know, Anatoly knows cigars. You know, he knows his way around cigars. He's clearly been in before. Do you find that it's improved your network in any way for that reason, or am I just on a tangent?
For me, I wouldn't consider myself an aficionado or a connoisseur at all. For me, it's like I'm documenting my journey, and as I learn, I just share it with everyone. I wouldn't consider myself a very knowledgeable person. I've read a book about cigars, and I run a channel where it's like, here's fun history and fun educational facts about cigars. But as I learn, I hope to reach a level where it's like, hey, it's either I can share more with my friends about different history and educational parts about the cigars, or it's like now I get to have my own cigar brand, or I get to partner with people or do more content around it, because it is a lot of fun, because at the heart of the cigar is good company.
For sure.
And being in good company is worth its weight in gold.
So tell me then, if you had a friend, or you had recently acquired a new friend through networking, for example, and you were to introduce them to their first cigar, what cigar would that be?
That's a really good question. I would say Oliva is a very good starter brand. So a lot of people make the mistake of going for very expensive cigars. And this is where he said, hey, I don't want a good cigar wasted on me. There is an element of truth to it, because if, let's say, I was someone that doesn't smoke at all, I sat them down and I'm like, let me get you a cigar. And I get them a $3,000 cigar. And they smoke it. That's their first cigar. They don't know what a good or a bad cigar feels like. They're inhaling smoke, and chances are they're inhaling it into their lungs. They're not sure how to smoke it, and they're coughing.
There's a bit of a cough to it as well.
Yeah. And especially if it's a stronger one, you don't want them to start with a stronger cigar. Funny enough, the first time I had a cigar was around 3-4 years back, and I picked this massive, I think it's called a double Corona cigar. We're having a little bit of noise in the background. I don't know if the microphone is going to pick up on it. Regardless, we're going to keep going. And I picked the biggest, strongest cigar, and I felt lightheaded about 1/3 of the way into it. It was, for perspective, I think it was twice bigger than this. I think this is a Churchill right here. It was a double Corona, and it was absolutely massive, and my head was spinning. I didn't collapse or anything, but I was way over my head with it. And the first cigar that you have generally shouldn't be more than $8 to $15 for a stick.
Interesting, yeah, because I've had a similar experience where I got slightly further into stick, but it wasn't even a full-bodied one. It was only getting into the cigar realm, and I'd chosen a cigar based off someone else's opinion. I took it, and I think they underestimated how new I was to cigars, and I had exactly that same experience. I had a nicotine rush, went straight to my head, probably
Yep.
about half the way in, and I continued smoking, thinking that it was just a normal occurrence. Yeah, sure, everyone's probably experiencing this, but then I realised, okay, right, this must be just a me thing, because I'm looking around and thinking, well, everyone's fine with their cigars. And it was, yeah, interesting experience, because then you kind of just get some water, come over it for a few minutes, then get back to the cigar. But I think I also made the mistake of rushing straight through my cigar, almost not as fast as possible, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't take the time to sit and really converse while I was having it. I was just sat there smoking it as if it was a regular occurrence for me.
Yeah, and you don't want to be smoking it too fast, because you're burning it too fast, and that ends up ruining the taste and ruining the cigar. You want to let it sit. The puffs that one makes usually, you want it to be at least 30 to 45 seconds in between puffs to let it rest. And that's how you get the most taste out of the cigars, is by letting it sort of sit there. And some of the most important conversations in the world among global leaders that happened in the 60s were over cigars. And the nice thing about cigars is it really forces you to sit down and meditate, relax, breathe. There's the nicotine effect hitting. And it was super popular in the 60s with the Kennedy administration. When the world was closer than ever to nuclear war with Cuba, they were ripping Cuban cigars, ironically enough. And in your case, how old were you when you had your first cigar?
How old was I? Must have been about 3 years ago, so I would have been just about to turn 20. And it was actually at a networking event, and I didn't feel any form of pressure. I think a lot of people go out and they feel themselves pressured into doing something that they perhaps don't want to do.
Right.
But it was, for me, it was an experience. It was something brand new to me. It was something I'd looked at and I admired, and the idea of cigar smoking in general. I never grew up as a smoker. I think maybe perhaps that's why it took me slightly longer. But yeah, I had a enjoyable first experience in the company of good friends who walked me through what I was actually smoking, why I was smoking it. And I took them on their recommendation at that time, and it was one of the lightest cigars I think I could possibly have had, which was beautiful. It's a very good entry level for me. I couldn't even tell you the name of it. It's probably a mistake on my part. I should have remembered that, because then I would be able to offer that to a friend of mine in the future who may be having their first cigar. But yeah, just over 3 years ago, and I've then had them periodically since. I've probably had them once every 5 to 6 months, as infrequently as that.
And here you are now, smoking a cigar in Dubai. What was the journey that brought you here? Because a lot of young men in Britain want to get out of Britain and want to be where you are now. Kind of like, how did you get here?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the most traditional route. It was actually at that first event where I had my first cigar that I met the first ever person that I worked with in copywriting, which is something I was learning at the time. I had a relatively good skill for writing, for being able to articulate myself on paper. It was a natural course of progression for me to at least look at copywriting as a potential starting basis to get myself into, whether that was journalism in the future, whether that was public speaking in the future to some extent. But it just seemed like a natural course of progression based on my skills at the time. So I walked into copywriting, landed my first gig as a result of networking during my first cigar. From there, it was a quick progression onwards to social media. and then I was in social media management, digital marketing, and then it quickly moved into brand partnerships as well. And brand partnerships is where I found my forte, because I'd worked in hospitality for almost 5 years. And in hospitality, I learned a lot to do with sales, upselling different wines. Wines was my forte at the time. I was specifically sent on coaching programs to go and learn more about wine. So your knowledge on cigars, not at the expert level, but still quite good, is probably mine when it comes to wine. Because to get from the middle to the expert level in wine is very difficult. But the companies that I would work for would send me off to different wine training so I could go up my levels. And that's how I found my passion for upselling in the restaurant business. So then it was, again, a natural course progression for me to try and apply those sales skills into social media, which led to brand partnerships. And then more recently, I've looked at the state of the country that I live in, that I grew up in, born and raised, and I just found myself craving more purpose. I think anyone can go to a job and you can love your job, but it doesn't necessarily fulfill you with your purpose in life. I really believe that everyone has a purpose in life, and too many people choose not to pursue it out of comfort. And I decided to take on the arguably dangerous to some extent world of politics. And since then I've delved into the political realm, started making content about it, and I've been able to amass a very decent following, especially in the past few months specifically, but I've been creating content now for just over a year. And I've found that level where I'm able to articulate myself, deliver the message I want to deliver, and also not doing it in a way that's overly hostile. Of course, there are always going to be negative comments when you talk in anything political, but I've managed to strike that balance between delivering news effectively, delivering news factually, but also delivering it on and in alignment with my personal beliefs and opinions.
And doing it factually is super, super important. Even for when I create content for the Cigar channel, it's whenever brainstorming ideas or typing up a script or doing research, I find that a lot of the things that make it into the script, I then have to remove because I end up double checking them. I can't find any proof behind this. And sure, this would make for a very good story. Yes, this would make for very good clickbait, very good number of views and capturing people's attention. But ultimately, there's a level of integrity that we have to maintain in order to remain credible and put truth out there.
Absolutely. And I think, especially under different social media management, a lot of people's first major mistake is putting too much emphasis on having to over-exaggerate hooks to get people to watch them in the first place. And I'm a firm believer in, of course, hooks need to be good for any form of content. That's the beauty of content as it is. But to over-exaggerate your hooks actually damages you in the long term because it makes you less credible. Now, as similar to finding and striking that balance between factually and being able to deliver my own opinions, I was able to do that quite early on, but it didn't gain traction. But I wasn't worried about it gaining traction because originally it was just a passion project. You know, as I said, I walked into politics knowing that I had this feeling inside of me that felt I wasn't fulfilling my purpose with regard to what I could do for the country. I believe that the country is a failing state as it is. I don't believe we're definitively failed yet, but I think the next election is going to be pivotal when it comes to the difference between whether we are just failing or whether we have failed, full stop.
And as a Canadian, and yourself being from UK, like that resonates with me a lot. I feel like a lot of the Commonwealth has really slowed down and declined over the past 10-ish years. And it's been sad for me personally to see Canada declining financially, ethically, morally in the past 10 years, so much so to the point where I don't recognize my hometown of Toronto that I've been spending 20 years in. I'm very lucky to have immigrated to Canada at a young age of 7 with my family, and for Canada to have taken us in. Everything I have in my life is thanks to Canada. The education, the military training that I have, I'm very fortunate to have, and it's thanks to Canada and the way that this democratic system has been built. But unfortunately, it seems that things in Canada are at a decline, where a lot of both young and older Canadians are opting out to leave. And I think we're seeing something very similar happen to UK, where a lot of British people move to some islands, move to Dubai, move to somewhere in Eastern Europe because they don't want to be living in their home country.
It's exactly that. It's unfortunately, it's been a steady decline, but a never-ending one. You know, we haven't seen any form of potential resurrectional revival of what we used to have. It has just been a very steady decline, and it hasn't been as rapid as some people want to call it, but it's because everyone ignored it during its initial phase, to the point where now everyone's woken up to it and gone, wow, it's happened overnight. And it hasn't happened overnight.
No.
There's of course different opinions around it, whether it's been designed to be this way, whether there are elites at play, different factors at play. But honestly, I think it's been in a decline for a long time, and only now people are really feeling the impacts of the decline in the economy specifically. We hear cost of living so frequently now. Cost of living this, the cost of living is difficult, and it really is. You can walk to any almost any neighbourhood now in the UK, not any neighbourhood, but almost any neighbourhood, and you really see people struggling. And at the same time, you've got people that unfortunately and I can't necessarily blame all of them because the system's been designed this way, but you have people that make the dangerous journey across to the UK via small boat, who are then given a life of luxury to some extent. And when I say luxury, it's not the 5-star penthouses, but it's the 4-star 3 meals a day, all paid for by the taxpayer. And when you compare that to that of the average working individual in the UK, who needs to work for everything they have, who pays taxes to fund people that now live this free life, that's why I use the term luxury, because it's not necessarily luxury by definition, but it's luxury by comparison. And when I'm comparing the life of that of almost every working individual in the UK, the people who ensure that all of the services in the country continue running, you've got those people who are struggling to pay the bills at the end of the month. We've got forever rising taxes. We've got forever rising grocery prices, where every time you go to the shop, it feels like something is more expensive than it was the last week. And only now you've got you've got supermarkets that offer these discounts, but really they're still profiting off of things that are discounted in the first place. We are in a state of crisis, and it isn't an overnight thing. It has been a very long time, but I do believe that there is a chance to overhaul what we're seeing at the moment. But I believe there's one chance left, and that's why I'm so passionate about delivering the content that I do, and why I deliver it to the extent and the fact that I do, because I want to make sure that everyone is as informed as possible. And look, I'm not going to tell anyone to make their own decision or how to vote, but I would like to think that people would vote a specific way as soon as you know the facts. There's political parties that are into all sorts of different left agendas that are going to cost hundreds of billions. You've got this brainwashing that we see in universities now, where everyone comes out with this immediate idea that everyone should be equal regardless of how much work you put in, and it's so false. You'll never have a functioning society on that system.
What would you say, was there a particular moment in the history of Britain where things started shifting for the negative? Is there that one particular point in time that you can pinpoint, or was it with an administration that came in? How long ago did this start?
It's a very good question. And I think there's different points in time where you could argue that the decline either sped up or stagnated, but still declined at a steady pace, as I said. And I think the problem with everyone who's asked that question and they answer it too quickly is they default back to the last Prime Minister that they didn't like, or the last Prime Minister that wasn't part of their ideology, fought for their party at the time. But I could do that. For example, I could go as far back as Tony Blair, who I like to use the term open the floodgates when it comes to military involvement in the Middle East and what happened there when it comes to WMDs, etc., which led to a mass influx of immigration, because then he had to opened the borders to everyone and said, right, come, we understand we've done potentially wrong here. We'll open our borders and you can come and live a life on us. But then again, you could go even further back than that when our gold reserve was sold, which crashed the economy to that extent. The gold reserve that we sold back when we did it, we sold all of our gold. It was a Labour government. I believe it was Gordon Brown. And the gold that we sold would now be 4 times, if not more, the value that it was when it was sold. And we now have no gold reserve. So
I didn't know this.
yes.
About Britain.
Yeah. So Britain no longer has a gold reserve. A lot of it was sold by Gordon Brown, a Labour government. And the value of that gold, as we know, gold has risen astronomically recently, and it looks like it's only going to continue rising. But the value of that gold now would be worth so much more. And when I say 4 times, I think it's significantly more than that. But I say 4 times just because I know it's at least 4 times. But I'll have to do some research after to make sure that I get a definitive number. But it's the extortionate number that we would be worth if we still had the gold now. But they sold it at an undervalued rate, got rid of it all. And then the next Conservative government that came into power at the time was left with no gold to play with. If you don't have a reserve in the background, then your economy is already shot because you have no fallback on. You have no leverage. You have no power in that or to that extent. So it's an interesting question. I think there's different ways to answer it. But to sum up, I think there are different moments that people will take, but we could look back 20 years and we could look back 50 years. There's always been issues within the country, and unfortunately we haven't had people strong enough to make the decisive action and decisions to really put a foot in the door and say, hang on a second, we're on a decline, we need serious reform to be able to get ourselves back on track.
If I was to compare it to the Canadian case, I think many on the Conservative side would argue that, hey, the troubles really began with Trudeau that entered office in 2015 and hung around for the past 10 years and ended up giving up his seat to his successor now, the new Prime Minister.
Is that Carney?
Yeah.
Carney.
And it was very surprising to see the Liberals winning again in Canada, despite the shit show that took place over the past 10 years. And that left me at the conclusion that, hey, as someone that came to Canada at a young age and Canada has given everything to me, how can I try to help people that see things so differently from me? And how can I be the person that's trying to save them when this is what they want? They've seen what the government has done over the past 10 years, and they just voted back in the same party. And to be quite frank, I think the Liberals and Conservatives aren't that different from each other. And it could be because I'm so radically to the right personally. But it's just so interesting to watch the outcomes because nothing has changed. We're still at a decline. All the promises that Carney gave around, we're going to put Trump back in his place. And Carney would have lost. The Liberal Party would have lost had it not been the strong words from Trump against Canada when it came to the trade war.
Yep.
But somehow they have managed to maintain their foothold within the government. And the Canadian people, ultimately, if we believe that democracy works and it's legit and there was no foul play, the people have voted and the people have decided, and they said, we want round number 3 with the Liberal government, despite all of the setbacks that the Liberal government has put us on, the country being in this steep decline, a lot of rich people leaving, a lot of the money leaving Canada, a housing crisis, so a lot more homeless people, a lot of drug abuse. Despite all that, they're still here. And it's tough for me personally to find empathy for people that want this, because they knew what they were getting and they voted for that, and now they have it. And who am I to stop them from that?
It's difficult, isn't it? And to your point about when you said that you think the right and the left are they're more aligned than they think. This is a continuous message that I try to push periodically throughout my content. I try to make people realize and understand that the opinions of the right and the left and what we actually want for ourselves is very similar. It's the solutions that we have that are so different. If we were to say we want everyone to be raised out of poverty, the left and the right will agree. But the way in which that is done, the left have this idea of socialism, which doesn't work. The right have the idea of capitalism, which has worked, but there have been issues. Mm-hmm. it really just circles back, and I think a lot of people need to understand that we're so much more similar than we are different, and unfortunately it's just the way in which we perceive the world as to how we need to get to this eventual outcome where everyone can be prosperous, where everyone can have opportunity. But unfortunately, I believe that this is how the world should be. The world has been designed on a merit basis. If you are not going to put the work in, you are not going to see results. You are not going to see prosperity. And it's those, of course, there are a few with extreme levels of wealth, and that's a separate conversation. But then again, they are, the people with extreme levels of wealth have that level of wealth for a reason. Elon Musk, he has so many haters simply for the value at which he's worth. As I say to people in my content, I understand your envy towards someone with an awful lot of money, and it could be argued that he doesn't need that amount of money. I understand those arguments. But with that said, this is an individual who has completely revolutionized electric vehicles. This is an individual who is trying to make another planet habitable and is taking the steps necessary to get there. Whether we'll get there in his lifetime, I don't know, but he's at least trying his best for us to get there. There isn't anyone else in the world that are taking the measures that he's taking, at least to the extent that he's doing it, to get us to these places. And he's worth the amount that he's worth as a result of these things. And to your point also about trying to help those that just seem like they're never going to understand the way in which me and you might think. The way in which the world works, in that we are a merit-based society and socialism doesn't work. I'll tell you a quick story. There's a video I saw years back of Ronald Reagan, right, when Ronald Reagan was either running for president or he was president, I can't remember, but there was a video of Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan is speaking directly to the camera, and he tells a story of him. And he says he had a couple of friends that he went round to their house one day, and his friends had a daughter. And his daughter came up to him, and they had this conversation about how she could earn some money. Because she said, why is it that there are so many homeless? It was this conversation about homeless. Why is there so many homeless? It's such a shame that this is the case. And he said, well, here's what we'll do. You come to my house, you mow my lawn, or you do some tasks, whatever the tasks were, and I'll pay you $50. And with that $50, you can go to the homeless and you can give them the $50 out of your own pocket. And she thought for a second, yeah, that sounds great. But then she asked him a question. This is the most important question that everyone needs to ask themselves. She asked Ronald Reagan, but why doesn't the homeless man just do it himself, earn the $50, and therefore I don't need to do it for him? And he said, welcome to the Republican Party. And the friends of his were Democrats. They were teaching her about, obviously, we need to look out for the homeless and everything. But her immediate response as a fairly intellectual young lady was, why doesn't the homeless person just do it instead, so I don't need to do the work and give him the money at the end of it? And that's the issue we have.
That's the essence.
Now, I'm not saying that it's every homeless person's fault that they're homeless. I'm not saying that every homeless person has the same opportunities that in this scenario, but there's an underlying message that is, realistically, if you were to work and put the effort in, there is a life for you. The world wasn't built on people who never worked. The world was built on people that worked for very little money and got it up and running, especially after World Wars, right? We had the Industrial Revolution in the UK. We've now closed this is crazy, we've now closed our final steel production. So we don't create any steel in the UK
Wow.
anymore. Instead, we import it from other countries, but because we don't personally create it, we can say that that's a net zero. This is all under the Green Initiative. We're now...
Funny how it works.
Exactly. We're now reliant on other countries. We're now no longer self-dependent. We're reliant on other countries for steel, which is pivotal when it comes to building. We have a housing crisis that we now can't facilitate because we don't have the equipment to build these houses, and it's this ever-ending loop of let's try and look good on the world stage by bringing our emissions to zero, or let's try and be as green as possible, but we're going to effectively destroy the lives of everyone else that's living in the country as a result.
And I love that Reagan story, by the way. I remember seeing that video. I was laughing when I first saw it. And Why is there such a massive emphasis in Britain around greenhouse gas emissions? You guys have even these cameras that track emissions from vehicles that for a while Brits were going out and just doing God's work and cutting them down, getting rid of them in protest. Why are the British so fascinated by emissions?
There's a simple answer. It's profitable. Just like the medical industry is extremely profitable, the same question can be asked in the US. Why are so many children on so much medication in the US? Because it's profitable. If we found cures for every single illness, the industry would go bust. The greenhouse gas emissions, carbon neutral, net zero. All it takes is quick research into who is profiting from these ideologies. The questions need to be asked. Why is it that in Antarctica for 4 years straight we now have more ice than we're losing? Another question: when you build so much value of property on Florida, which lies just above sea level, Florida, Miami specifically, would be one of the first places to be wiped out if sea levels ever rose significantly. Why is there so much investment going into a place like Miami if the true belief is that over time the sea levels are going to rise because of emissions? You have to start looking at all these things. Where is the money? The money's in the industry, and the money's also being placed in areas that would be affected by a climate change if it were actually the case. I'm not saying that climates don't fluctuate, but people are only talking about the last 50 years. Why are we not looking at the last couple of thousand years? Of course, we have no data for it, but who's to say that? I mean, we've had ice ages before, right? But who's to say that the weather hasn't fluctuated for the past thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, and just now we're in a bit of a rise, and then we're going to come down at some point.
I love that answer. In Canada, I can't say we are as fascinated, but we're very much taking inspiration from you guys. And Canada's not too far behind Britain in many of the aspects. Where's Britain now with the whole initiative around digital IDs?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll start by saying this. I've been pleasantly surprised with the reaction towards digital IDs by both the left and the right. This is arguably the first topic in a very, very, very long time where the left and right are both aligned. Nobody, apart from the very few, want digital IDs. Now, it's an interesting conversation. Everyone's going to learn a lot. The argument put forward for digital IDs by the UK government was that it would curb illegal immigration on the basis that there is black market work in the UK, and how can people be employed if they have a digital ID and it proves that they are either a UK citizen or they're not. But the black market, that doesn't change the black market. We already have passports, driver's license, national insurance number, which is our official, in the UK, it's our official number to be able to prove that you're eligible to work in the UK. If we already have these things, why do we need the digital ID? Now, the digital ID has also been proposed under the basis that it makes everything more convenient. You have everything stored in one place. When you go out, you don't need physical cards. I get it. But the problem is, and everyone has seen through it, which I've been very surprised about, but very pleasantly surprised, everyone's seen through it, two major issues with digital IDs. The first being, when all of your information is compiled into one place, you are significantly more susceptible to data breaches. We see data breaches, we see hacks all the time. Banks are hacked, social media apps are hacked, GPT, PayPal, and a couple of other companies all went down at the same time, right? At the moment, as it stands, if someone is to hack your bank, they can only hack your credit cards at that specific bank. So there's two main issues with digital ID. The first issue is when you have all of your data compiled into one place, you are significantly more susceptible to data breaches. As we've just seen recently, banks can be hacked, social media apps can be hacked. If you have all of your information sat in one place, one simple hack and someone can have everything, right? This is a hacker's dream. What we've just released, this idea of digital IDs, this is a hacker's dream. To make it very easy for people online, I relate it back to this. Are you a Harry Potter fan? Have you watched Harry Potter?
Oh man, as a kid, I absolutely loved it. I had my own little wand, my own little book of spells that I would make myself. I was a big time Harry Potter fan.
So here's how I try to make it very easy to understand for people. Voldemort split his soul into Horcruxes. The idea of splitting his soul into Horcruxes was that even if one was ever destroyed, the others would be fine. They're all in different locations. He kept one close with him. One of them was obviously in Harry Potter.
Multi-factor.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we have at the moment when it comes to credit cards. Who has just 7 credit cards at one bank account? You don't, or one bank, you don't, right? You have one bank account open here, one bank account open there, different interest rates, different benefits on your credit card. Mm-hmm. This is the reason we have it in the first place, because if someone were to hack into one bank and take your information from that bank, it can be contained. You know, mm-hmm. You're insured on credit cards. You can claim your insurance back. You get the money back that's been spent on your credit card. No big issues. What they're going to do when they compile all of your data together, you could lose everything at the click of a finger. People could steal your entire identity in the space of seconds. They know your name, they know your address, they know your medical information, they know your credit cards, they can have everything about you in the space of a few seconds. That's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is finance specific. At the moment, when he first, Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, when he first went on this ramble about digital IDs, as I said, he put it on the basis that it would curb illegal immigration. It's false. But even with that said, even if it was going to do that, the issue is what comes next, because as I said, sure, it can be more convenient, but when you give the government that much access to your life, they're going to abuse it, as we know. Whether that's this government or whether that's a government 15 years from now that we don't even know exists yet. It could be a fringe government that comes into power and now they have everything stored in one place. Now, what happens when they decide to link all of your credit cards to your digital ID, from which point they then get to dictate what you spend your money on? Let's say, for example, back in the day, smoking was pushed, right? When cigarettes were first rolled out, the government told everyone they're great for you. Everyone's smoking. Now we obviously know that there's a bit of an effect on your health. Imagine if in 15 years from now they turn around and say red meat is terrible for you. In that case, what we're going to do, we're going to limit you to 1 kilogram of red meat per month. And you say, oh, whatever. Obviously, I'm not going to listen to that, but your credit cards are now attached to your digital ID. When you go to make your purchase of, if you buy a couple of 300 gram steaks in the first week, you buy another one in the third week, all of a sudden you want to buy one in the fourth week, but that goes over your 1 kilogram limit.
Boom, penalty.
Now, exactly, penalty, or complete null and void. You can't make the purchase, you can't leave the shop
yep.
with those items. Now, of course, it sounds like an extreme example, but I called this months ago when it was first released. Then, Keir Starmer travelled to India during a trade conference with India, and to quote him directly, he said, digital IDs, we see it in India, 1 billion plus people have it in India, and he is on record now on live television as saying digital IDs in India have have improved how people can access their money. We can already access all of our money. We have Apple Pay, we have credit cards, we have credit limits.
We have cash.
We have cash. We have overdrafts if necessary. We can already access our money. So why is Keir Starmer talking about digital IDs being able to have an impact on how we're able to use our money? It's because they've already got this vision in line. But some people were calling me stupid. People were saying this will never happen. And then Keir Starmer comes out and says this, and I made a video about it at the time and explained it's literally in broad daylight. Maybe he's covered it for now, but he's giving you hints so that when it comes, he can say, I told you, I said this months ago, everyone should have been fine with it. 2 main problems, and just to summarise, the first being data breaches. With all of your information in one place, that is extremely dangerous. It's a hacker's dream. And second is finances. If those of you at home in the UK really want your life to be dictated by the government, you will love digital IDs. But I promise everyone now, there is no positive or benefit to your life by allowing the government more access to it. If you allow the government to dictate exactly what you buy, you are going to be disappointed in the future when you are not allowed to buy what you want to buy and live your life how you want to live. That is the best summary of digital IDs that I can give for now.
There's so little to gain as an individual from a personal perspective to give up your control over your own life, over your own identification, to put that into the hands of a government that is completely uninterested in you personally. To them, you're just a number. You're citizen number 7,361,541. To them, they're not invested in you as an individual. There's very little to gain. The Canadian government recently came out with a new rule about red meats. Ones that are lab grown are no longer required, and double check this, they're no longer required to let the consumer know and put the label on it saying this is a lab grown meat as opposed to real meat. Isn't that so fucked up?
It's insane, but look, imagine connecting the digital IDs to something like that. Imagine they cross their ideas and all of a sudden you can only have 500 grams or a kilogram worth of natural grass-fed meat, and then after that you can have as much lab-grown meat as you want, but it's lab-grown. You don't have all of the molecular benefits that you do with a real grass-fed cow.
You have a quota on the greenhouse gases you can emit as a person, and because cows emit a lot of GHG,
Yep.
all of a sudden you're limited to 1.5 kilos.
But you know another problem with our government at the moment? We have an issue with transparency. Our government is not transparent about what they want to do. You come to a place like Dubai where we are now. Dubai is effectively a dictatorship, right? They have the Crown Prince and the King who will say, you do this and you don't do this. But the trust is there because you know where they stand. Of course, there are severe penalties for things that may not be as harsh in other countries, but at least you know exactly where you stand. When it comes to the UK, similar to the digital IDs, they're trying to push a lot for it at the moment. Another one is called the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Now, when you hear that off the top of your mind, what do you think? If you hear they're pushing through the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, first thoughts?
Something around protecting kids from any outside influence, predators, child molestation, stuff like that. That's the first thing that pops into my mind.
Exactly that. That's what it sounds like. But all they're doing is they're headlining something that sounds great, sounds beneficial, but they're doing the opposite. The Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill is effectively being designed and pushed through Parliament at the moment as a way to effectively take control away from parents and give it to the government. So it's to push through legislation which would make mandatory children to also have digital IDs. So at which point then they're tracked anywhere they go, anything they say, if it's connected to any form of mobile device, the government has access to them immediately, exactly where they are, what they're doing, what they're saying. That's something that could be used 10 years from now. That wasn't controversial when they first said it, but now it's controversial. You have all these things that have. We also have another one, the Online Safety Act. How good does that sound? Oh, of course everyone's going to vote for the Online Safety Act. Again, it's the complete opposite. As part of the Online Safety Act, it's effectively a censorship measure. So it's hundreds of different small pieces of legislation, but encompassed under one umbrella, the Online Safety Act. And the reason they pushed it through under the guise that it would protect kids from porn, it would protect kids from porn online. Kids are around that immediately. VPN. They download a VPN on their phone. They pretend that they're in another country. They load up their websites that they want to use and they use them. So there was always going to be a loophole around that in the first place, and the government would have known that. That's not something that isn't common knowledge. Everyone knows VPNs exist, and everyone knows you can get around things like that with VPNs. So as this Online Safety Act has been introduced, it stopped you from searching certain things on the basis that it's harmful. And don't get me wrong, I agree, but they know that. But it's everything else they add to the rest of the bill. Censorship measures, giving people in Parliament the authority to be able to take down posts without questioning. They just take down posts if they don't like what you post. How insane is that? What is the Online Safety Act is now effectively a measure that allows the government to take down any post that they deem to be, that they don't need to prove, but that they deem to be misinformation.
And we're seeing this happen in Canada as well. Regardless of what you think about certain parts of history, something maybe happened, something maybe didn't happen. In Canada, we've had the first moment where someone is put into prison, put into jail for denying the Holocaust. We've had the first one of those. And it's a very dangerous thing to do, because based off the words you say, based off the things that you believe, based off the history that you may disagree with, you can now be put into prison.
This is the fine line. Myself and this individual might disagree, but should that mean that this individual should be cancelled or incarcerated? No. It's as simple as that. What is it about these governments that allows them to think, even in the first place, that they have the authority to dictate exactly what we're allowed to think, what we're allowed to say, what we're allowed to do, what we're allowed to, or where we're allowed to go, what we're allowed to spend our money on, where our information and personal details are sent to? It's absolutely insane. And this is the exact reason why I got into the political industry itself, because there needs to be a force for good and there needs to be a voice of reason. And as I said at the very start, there may be people that disagree with me, but I don't say things in a hostile way, and I will deliver the fact. Now, you can disagree with me on the fact, at which point it's your opinion versus my fact, and we can agree to disagree on that basis, but everyone knows that fact will forever outweigh emotion. Or you have some people that will look at it and go, I hear the Online Safety Act, it sounded good, but I'm going to listen to Ben's 3-minute video breakdown on what the Online Safety Act actually is. Then I'm going to do the research and cross-check them to make sure that he is actually delivering the truth, and then I'm going to have my new opinion on it. But unfortunately, too many people hear these buzzwords, hear terms like racist, and go, this person called him a racist, he must be a racist. Misogynist, oh, the government called this person a misogynist, they must be a misogynist. And it's these buzzwords that, unfortunately, for the most part, it is the left. The left hear buzzwords and they flock towards it. And it was interesting, I saw a chart recently of the differences in opinions between the left and the right. Not between the left and the right, but within their own contingent. And the differences in opinion between the left vary so little in comparison to that of the right. And why is that? Because the right are fairly accepting. If I disagree with someone, I can disagree with someone on anything, and opinion-based, we'll call this, and I will be happy to agree to disagree. But unfortunately, a lot of what we see now is the left, as someone on the left, a liberal, will hear my opinion and they will completely disassociate themselves with me or from me. And it's sad, because what you end up having is you have this left contingent that have to think the same way, and if they don't, they're immediately pushed out of the circle. Or it's almost like cannibals. You eat your own arm before anything else.
Yep.
And it's almost like you're trying to cut the arm off before the infection gets to the rest of your body. Any liberal that steps out of line just one tiny bit, says that men are men and women are women, all of a sudden they get kicked to the curb. Well, you can't be a liberal. You can't be a liberal if you're not going to agree with us that women can have penises, right? It's these kind of scenarios that we're getting. And it's so interesting to see the fact that you can consider yourself on the right and you can have such varied opinions, but we can also be good friends. I'm sure there's much we'll disagree with, but that's not going to change anything. Whereas if there was a liberal sat across from us and they heard this conversation and they had to chip in their opinion, all of a sudden the likelihood is that they're going to look at us and go, don't want to associate with them. I can't even be at the same table as them. And it's limiting. It's limiting, it's disappointing, it's where we are as society. And that, I suppose that was my loop round on as to why I got into politics as it is, to try and connect people and show them the fact and allow them to do the cross-checking. And when you can prove to yourself that what I say is true, you can form your own opinion as a result.
And I've never heard anyone say this before, and I love the part from 30 minutes ago where you said, hey, both liberals and conservatives, regardless where you are in the spectrum, we all sort of want the same thing. We want good health. We want to protect our families. Mm-hmm. We want ourselves and others to be prosperous. We all want to win. But it's the methods by which we do it that really differentiates us.
Exactly that. Exactly that. It's the solution to a cause. A lot of us are looking for the same things. There will be a 10 to 15% of things that we actually just want different outcomes for in general. But for the most part, if we look at each other now and we say, I wish you to be healthy, I pray for you to be successful. I'm sure a lot of also the left and the right, if we were all in a circle right now, we would all be looking at each other and go, I do wish you were healthy. I wish the best for you, for your family, for anyone that you ever associate with. I hope that you can go through life without, I personally think that struggle is part of living life. Someone on the left may want to limit their struggle as much as possible. That's fine, that's a difference in mindset. But if that's the case, if they don't want to struggle, I wish that you don't have to struggle. But the solution to getting to a position in which you don't struggle, to me, that's hard work. And you fight through the struggle to get to a position where you no longer struggle. But then on the left, you might have an opinion where it's a different solution, where it's, if I don't want to struggle, I'm just not going to do anything that challenges me full stop, and therefore I'll never have to experience struggle. But realistically, all that's doing is that's keeping you in a place where you're going to struggle for the rest of your life anyway. Because you're not learning new skills, you're not bettering yourself, you're not improving, you're not developing, you're not introducing yourself to new people, you're not developing your social skills, you're not learning new perspectives. And I think it hinders the left so significantly, and that is why it's very difficult to your point about trying to not convince them, but at least usher them and show them why you think the way you do. Not that they have to agree, but trying to explain. And unfortunately, there are just people, as a result of all of that just will not listen.
What do you think is the answer for young Brits out there that are looking to make it work in Britain? And I know this is a very open-ended question, but what should they be doing?
Make it work how? Politically, or just their life in general?
Just their life in general? Let's start their life in general and then politically. How do we get out of this situation?
I can only talk on personal experience, and I think that's what everyone should do, because that is something they've lived. I'm someone who never went to university. I didn't buy into the idea that someone who'd never run a business could teach me how to run a business. Just as you also have teachers in math that may not have actually done anything of significance with math, but in their mind, something like algebra works. And algebra, of course, there are elements of algebra that could be applied to real life, but for the most part, I would rather know quick mental maths. I can do maths in my head, I can do business-related things, I can learn what tax actually is before leaving school.
Applicable items.
Applicable items, exactly. And to your question of what can young Brits do, almost to break that cycle, is to focus on actionable skills, learning actionable skills and applying them, rather than believing that someone is out to truly change your life and help you. Because no one can hold your hand and walk you through life. There's not a single person that can do that. And I think for many young Brits, they go to university with the mindset that they're at least going to be given a bit of a stepping stone, a bit of a push, a bit of leverage. But what they instead come out of university with is an awful lot of debt, no applicable life skills, and a piece of paper that tells them that they can do something better than me, even though I've been acting on that skill for the past 3 to 5 years that they've spent at university. I think university, for the most part, is a scam. Of course, there are professional fields that are extremely necessary when it comes to veterinarians, when it comes to doctors, when it comes to dentistry. These kind of professional fields. STEM, of course. The engineering, these are things that, of course, you need to study additionally to be able to gain the qualifications required. But with that said, is that to say that you couldn't go off and do it by yourself if you applied yourself every single day to learning that skill and finding a way in which you were able to apply it to everyday life? I truly don't believe that any university can take away your ability to learn something, apply yourself, learn the skill, and be able to profit from it in the future. And too many Brits look at university as a scapegoat, as their only option, when there really realistically are so many different options out there.
Okay, let's say not university. What would be the alternative to going to university?
So there's plenty of alternatives, but unfortunately no one is taught them at school. So at school, our system is built to send as many people to university as possible, because it makes us look better on the world stage. You know, we have this many people qualified to do this, when realistically they haven't actually done it. Mm-hmm. They just can say that they're capable of doing it. You know, we have different apprenticeships available, which are low paying, but they introduce you to basic skills to begin with. You know, you have things like trades where it's hands-on. You're learning a way in which, whether it's something you go into in the long term, it's an applicable skill that you can use that is going to save you money in the long term. So you're not having to spend £500,000 every few months to try and get your boiler sorted, right? Or to try and fix the pipes that lead to your shower. You can always look into creating your own business. I think so many people struggle as well because they end up choosing paths that aren't aligned with them, with their purpose, as I mentioned at the very start, something that really truly fulfills them and makes them feel like what they're doing is actually contributing to society. I think too many people are going through life without any purpose at all. And I think without purpose, you become lost. And when you're lost, there's not an awful lot of hope. And you're almost hoping and voting politically on the basis that someone is going to give you as many freebies as possible and more freebies than the next political party is going to give you.
They're sitting there and praying that they're going to get that magic paycheck from the government, that extra stim check, some sort of a relief on gas.
Yep.
Or something related to health, where it's like, hey, free healthcare, free dentistry, which is all great things, but ultimately, why not just focus on getting more money?
You imagine this problem. We now have this issue in the UK where it's more profitable for families to be on benefits than it is to work a minimum wage job. That tells you everything you need to know about the economy.
The math doesn't work.
It does not work. How is it that people... I understand the benefit system was created for a reason. There are people that genuinely need benefits, and I'm more than happy for my tax to go to. The whole point of tax was originally introduced to levy and fund money for war. After the war, tax was kept on the basis that it would fund people that were severely affected and people that were vulnerable and therefore needed the additional help. And everyone bought into that idea, and I think right and left would both agree. Sure, if we all paid flat 20% tax, but it went to the right places, I don't think there'd be a single person that would argue with that. But the problem is we now have a system that's built where you can get funded off the back of other people's work and tax and live a better life than a person who is working 45, 50 hours a week on minimum wage, who is actually paying tax, contributing back, but can't live the same life that the person living for free can. That to me is a huge issue, and that's another big issue that the right are leaning on a lot at the moment, because it really does put into perspective where we're at as a country.
And there's a lot of weight on the taxpayer's back to deliver on those taxes and make it work for the people that are looking for freebies. The math doesn't math.
No, the amount doesn't matter. And again, that circles back round to the difference in solutions on the left and the right, because the solutions on the left is to tax those who have money even more than they already are being taxed, which is actually pushing them away from the country. But the right solution is to either get up off your arse and go and work, or cut areas in which we're spending too much money on projects that don't go anywhere and don't actually benefit the average British person. That is the biggest differentiator between the solutions that we see. The solutions on the left is, I'm going to let this person work even more and contribute more to live for me. But the right say, well, I'm going to work even harder and make sure that money is actually spent correctly and for the benefit of those that are in my country as opposed to everyone else around the world.
We covered the kind of personal financial side. What do you think politically? How do we get Britain out of this politically? Is there any hope?
There is no hope. If the next election does not go in a particular way, if it does not go to a government that is looking out for the best interests of the British people, specifically British people, we are going to have a mass exodus of individuals from the UK. New stats were released for 2024. Over 200,000 people left the UK permanently. That is a ridiculous number. Over 200,000 people packing up and leaving.
And it's the people that make the largest amount of money that can afford to leave and move to the better, greener pastures.
In New York, specifically, the top 1% cover 48% of tax. In the UK, I believe the top 1% cover about 33%. It's still a significant amount of money. And let's say even a quarter of those people go. A quarter of 33% is a significant amount. Where are we going to find that money? You either make spending cuts, which the left don't want to do, or you tax more on the average working British people, which makes their life a living hell, which it effectively already is. There are too many people at the moment in the UK that are having to work and live from paycheck to paycheck, wake up in the morning, do the right thing, contribute to society, ensure that our economy is maintained and continues running, and they're not rewarded for it. And therefore, to your question and to your point, if the next election doesn't go to a government that are going to prioritise British people, there is no hope.
In that case, what is the plan B? Get out of the country?
I think it has to be. I don't think there's any logical individual that would look at a country that's beyond repair and feel as if there's a future for them. Here's the thing. The question we need to ask these rich people, and this is a question that isn't asked enough, is why are they leaving? Sure, tax is one thing, but safety is another. And I'm a firm believer that 95% of people at least would prioritise safety over money. If you can guarantee that you can walk out of your front door, not be stabbed, not be killed, not be raped, serious things that happen all too often now. Just in the past 2 weeks, we've had a mass stabbing on a train, we've had a mass stabbing out in public, a man walking his dog died, a young boy was also stabbed at the scene as well. We've had women raped continuously by people that are argued to not be in the country. We have protests for those women that are raped, and then we have counter-protests from the left to say, no, what you're protesting is wrong. We have all of these things collectively, and the question needs to be, if we could sort out the safety problem, is the tax as much of an issue? Probably not. But without a safe place and without a future for your family, because that is what everyone's looking for. Everyone looks for themselves up until they're 20, and then from 20 onwards, you're really looking for a future. Is there a sustainable career path that I can pursue? And is a family, if I were to create one, going to be safe and going to have opportunity here in this country? And those are the main questions that I think people don't look at enough. People will argue that everyone goes to Dubai for the money. And of course, it's a massive factor. But I truly believe the biggest factor, the one that tops it, is the fact that you can come here as any single individual and you are safe. I don't look over my shoulder once when I come to Dubai. I don't think about who's behind me, who's in front of me, who's got what in their handbag, who's got what down the side of their jeans, who's got what in their joggers. I'm perfectly clear that everyone and anyone around me is not out to do me harm. People are here for opportunity. People are here to improve the city that we're currently sat in. And I believe that overall, people would be happy to pay taxes in countries that they were perfectly safe in. But we've let that side of the coin drop.
Safety is absolutely massive, and we're seeing the same thing in Canada, where car robberies are increasing 400% year over year, which is great for my dad's cameras and alarms business.
400%?
400% year over year. And
wow.
Many have heard this from the chief of police in Toronto, or one of the leaders from the Toronto police, basically saying, hey, just leave your car keys at the door to prevent any damage being done onto you. Leave it at the door. Don't try to protect yourself. And even more so, you're going to catch a charge if you apply force. There is a Canadian reservist that years ago went out with a shotgun to catch the guy that was stealing his car. And I believe he shot him and got incarcerated for it. Either incarcerated or he's still dealing with that lawsuit.
Yep.
And when you tell the people, hey, you can't protect yourself, you can't protect your property, you can't protect your children, you can't protect your wife, what the fuck are we doing?
Exactly that.
You're going to put me into prison for standing my ground and not being raped, not being taken advantage of? How did we get here?
How did we get here? I think that's the question everyone looks back at. And therefore, I suppose that takes us full circle to one of your first questions, which is who's to blame? Because we can look 20 years back and decide that this person who made this decision resulted in this, but then we can look 40 years back at that government at the time that made this decision that led to the government 20 years ago being in power? Or do we look all the way back to things like, to certain wars, to certain conflicts? There are so many factors now, and to look into the past is good to give us an indication of how we got to where we are, but complaining about the past never gets anyone anywhere. And I think now, hence I'm doing what I'm doing. All I can do at the moment is deliver the truth, and I can wake as many people up as possible. And I think if more people sought to look into the future as opposed to complain about the past, there is a way in which we can turn that around, and there is one or two political parties at the moment that have a vision for that, and they're the ones to look out for at the moment. But again, things change, and governments and political parties can tell you everything you want to hear, and then they get into power and they might do the opposite. So it's interesting. What a beautiful world we live in.
What a beautiful and interesting world, indeed. And when I served in the Canadian military, I remember there was an inspection. There was the final inspection that we had to pass before we were given our rights to leave base for the weekend to do whatever we wanted. And the lieutenant colonel would go around from tent to tent, doing the inspection, shaking our hands, saying hello. Not shaking hands, but giving a salute. And asking, why are you here? Why are you serving? And people give a variety of reasons. And not once did I hear, because I love my country.
That to me is a huge issue.
And part of the reason why I also like to think why I served is because Canada has given me a lot. It wasn't the primary reason. Ultimately, I think what made me join the military is because I was looking for that struggle. I look at it as a rite of passage for a young man. It's the kind of training that I wanted to have, and that'll always be reason number one. But somewhere deep inside is also a reason that, hey, ultimately I want to protect the country that has given me everything.
You want to give back. You want to give back. Work hard, give back to those who have helped you and encouraged you through life and given you the platform to which you've built now.
In your case, because I can tell you have a big heart, what is pushing you towards trying to wake up Brits? What is giving you the fire to have the heart to try to change the tide of things? Where do you draw your inspiration from?
It's the love for the country. I have people in my bloodline that have served, and we had a 100-year-old veteran turn 100, go on to one of our big news channels recently, and it was heartbreaking. He was you may have seen it.
Yeah.
But it was a 100-year-old veteran who was explaining how what he fought for is not what he sees today.
Absolutely heartbreaking.
And how can anyone that claims to love their country, that regardless whether you love your country or not, you should, if you're gonna be living in any country, you should learn to love that country for what it is, for everything in the past and now and in the future. But how can anyone that lives in the UK watch that video of that 100-year-old veteran and not feel ashamed of where we are today? That is an individual who went to war on the basis to protect what we had, our culture, our freedom, and we've lost both within a matter of 80 years. For various different reasons, multiple different reasons, we can track back to different periods of time and complain about different things, but there should not be a single UK citizen that looks at that video, watches that video in full, and does not feel, one, heartbroken, but two, a sense of purpose to do something different. And that is where I get my passion from. It's individuals like him, and I would never have known him until I saw that video, but it's my ancestors that have brought me, that have allowed me to experience this beautiful life. It's me drawing the line between right and wrong, and knowing that to find any fulfillment in life, I need to fight for what I know to be right. And what I know to be right is to fight for the people that put me in the position I'm in today, the people that fought to protect my country, the people that have raised me, my family. How can I let them go into old age where their pensions are going to be taxed higher than ever, despite working. My dad works more than most. My mum has worked 3 jobs for a very long time. How can I look at them in the eyes now, and know that if I weren't to do anything and play my part, in 30 years from now, they would be almost wishing that their time was up. Just that I never want them to get to a point where they just go, oh, this country isn't the same. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating, and that I suppose is where I get most of my drive from. It's a drive that didn't exist when I was a boy, because when you're a boy, you appreciate life for what it is. So you're not aware of the struggles that people go through to raise you and bring you up. But I think it should be the male imperative, and not even just the male, but everyone at this point, everyone who loves your country, everyone who cares for safety, should be worried about what's happening and should want to make a difference.
And it's a sense of duty that young men are missing, to say, hey, we can't keep doing this. And I admire men such as yourself that make the sacrifice and go out there and speak out against what's happening, knowing full well the level of effort that the government is going through in order to put people into prison, apply penalties onto those that speak out. It takes a lot of courage.
It does, and it is worrying sometimes. Sometimes you post something and think, oh, is that against the law? Is this going to get me in trouble? But then I think too many people are afraid, and if there is no voice for the truth and no voice for what everyone knows to be right, who, if not me, then who, right? Because who am I to expect someone else to do the dirty work when I'm unable to say that I'm doing it myself? Similarly, yourself in the military, I believe there must have been some degree of thought. Who am I to expect other people to go and defend my country if I'm not willing to do the same for the country that got me to the position I was in today at the time that you were serving? There must have been some element of that anyway.
Absolutely. And that's funny enough. I think one of the things that countries like Russia do very well, there is, from a very young age, especially we've seen that Renaissance, that World War II history and film Renaissance in the Soviet countries, with the media, with the movies, with the annual celebrations of Victory Day. In US and Canada, there are Marvel, there's DC, there's whatever pop music artists that are celebrated. In Russia, what they really celebrate are the veterans and their history of winning the Great War, the Sacred War, as they call it. And I was raised, even living in Canada, I was still raised on those movies that portrayed the hardship of World War II, that made me think our army's a no-brainer. And I think that's something that's very important to instill into the next generation, that, hey, there is such thing as sacrifice that has been getting paid from generation to generation. Now it's your turn.
Absolutely.
And that applies purposes. And I think in today's world also, where we have so much beauty, we have so much abundance, we have food on the table without even having to work. For a lot of people, they just apply for welfare, go to the food bank, whatever it is. We're very fortunate to have that, and those that are in need should be given it. And we should take care of our sick, disabled, homeless. But there needs to be a sense of duty.
Absolutely that. And could you imagine a world whereby every government chose to put their people first? We can help everyone else out after, but imagine a world where every government decided to put their people first, where the people revolted against small groups of people that decided to try and assimilate the role of dictators and leadership. If you cut that, if you took the head off the snake, cut out any vermin immediately, and you had a government, strong governments that put their country first, made diplomatic ties. Could you imagine the world that we'd be living in? Prosperous, safe. Of course, there will always be a class to some degree of hierarchy based on who works the most, who deserves, in quote, the most. But for the most part, if every single person were to prioritize their country, get the country on track, I'm sure there would be enough money in the world to be able to help those that were really struggling in areas of the world that do struggle more.
Very well said. Are you up for a quick rapid round of questions?
Rapid questions, let's do it.
Absolutely. Let's do rapid round of questions.
Let's do it.
First question. What do you think is the percentage chance that Britain recovers?
I'm going to remain optimistic and I'm going to say 60%.
What is the worst British city right now?
London, under Sadiq Khan. I'm going to say Prague at the moment, or Poland if you can speak their language.
Yeah, and I've been to Poland recently. A lot of people speak English in Warsaw. And it's very much a country that right now is on the upwards trend. A lot of American money coming in. And right now I'm living out of Riga, Latvia. And I definitely see myself moving to Warsaw at some point. Prague though, why Prague?
Sorry, and I say Prague, of course the country is Czech Republic, Prague specifically.
Yep.
Prague, you get the best of both major temperatures. You get beautiful winter, beautiful summer. When you have the snow, it looks just as good as it does in the sun. I find myself very safe. You still have a bit of the Eastern European culture. There are influxes of different cultures, but for the most part, the Czech Republic has remained Czech Republic.
Nigel Farage, net positive or net negative for Britain?
Net positive.
How come?
A lot of people will deem him to be a negative because of Brexit, which is when we left the European Union. The problem with labelling him as a negative as part of Brexit is, although he campaigned for Brexit and he was a very big factor as to why Brexit happened, he wasn't the one that conducted Brexit. So Brexit was carried out very poorly, but it was carried out under a Conservative government that he wasn't a part of. So although he campaigned for it, and I think overall it's always better for your country to not be dictated by that of other countries, I still believe that overall he's a net positive and he is a good chance for a way in which we can turn things around. With that said, I don't believe he is the ultimate solution, but I believe he's a stepping stone to get to the solution that is required.
Makes sense. Brexit, overall positive or negative for Britain?
I'm going to say it's just about positive, 55-45, simply because we're not dictated by that of the European Union. We have that freedom to be able to make decisions by ourselves. It has impacted us with things like trade. There's a falsehood that circulates that Brexit has led to more immigration. It hasn't. You can argue that sure, Brexit had elements of it increasing immigration, but every country around us has also seen increase in immigration. Canada, the US, France, all of these countries have experienced significant increases in immigration, and therefore, if Brexit is just a UK thing, Brexit can't be the sole factor as to why we now have high levels of illegal immigration.
What is your favorite thing about Britain?
The people, still.
Not the weather?
Don't get me wrong, the weather makes me feel very patriotic. I do love the weather for that reason, because you're in England when you're in England, right? You're in Scotland when you're in Scotland, there's a big difference. But the British weather, you at least you're home. When you're born and raised in Britain, you become accustomed to the weather and how quickly it changes. When you're in Britain, you're in Britain. That's the weather's home, but I still love the people.
Your DMs that you get and the comments that you get, are they more in support or is it just a bunch of death threats?
I get huge support. Sometimes they can be overshadowed by the odd death threat. There hasn't been many, there's been a couple. Realistically, these people aren't going to do anything. But I will forever look at the positive. The support I receive is immense, it's fantastic. I receive hundreds of DMs every week. They are, for the most part, almost all positive. There are a couple of death threats, as I said, that maybe shine or take light away from the positive, but I ignore them, block them immediately, and focus on the positives for sure.
Absolutely. Your parents, are they more proud or terrified?
Proud. Yeah.
God
sure.
bless.
For sure. Exactly that.
Your content in 5 years, would you say it would be around the same topic, or would there be a new country and a new topic around what you want to do?
I love my country. The intention is to keep my content surrounded about the UK, to help the UK as much as possible. The topics may not change an awful lot, but the content of the topics I'm hoping to be more positive over time.
Absolutely.
My content is very negative about the current government. I would like it to be more positive about future governments if they are as positive as I'd like them to be.
Would you ever get into politics?
Yes. Although my content was originally a passion project, because it has performed so well, there are opportunities that are arising. How far into politics I go is another question, but would I be interested in getting into politics? Yes.
What is one truth that would fix Britain if people accepted it?
Diversity is not our biggest strength. And I'll elaborate on that. Diversity by default cannot be inherently good, because diversity is broad and encompasses so many different things that it can't be underpinned by just one factor of it. Elaborate further. We can be diverse in race or religion, but none of that is inherently good. Sure, it allows us to connect with different people, but you can connect with different people of any race, of any religion, anywhere you go, anyway. I love connecting with people as people. I don't see them for their race or their religion. On the flip side of that, we can be diverse in skill set. To be diverse in skill set is a very good thing. Imagine you had a country where 100% of trades were plumbers, but we have no electricians, we have no builders, we have no carpenters. To be diverse in skill set is a fantastic thing and it's necessary. But to be diverse just because of what we look like is not an inherently good thing.
Love that. Final question. If you left this world tomorrow, what would be the message you'd leave to the younger generation, Bryn? Feel free to take your time with this one.
Find a purpose and run with it. To the best of our knowledge, we only get one spin at this, and then hopefully eternal life is what we're promised. But with that said, to the best of our knowledge, we get one spin at life. Find a purpose, run with it for as long as you can, and do something that truly fulfills you and truly makes you go home at the end of the day happy and content. Not every day has to be the best day ever, but make sure that at the end of every day you're content with how you've performed.
Ben, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, brother.
Just like this cigar, beautiful.
Glad you like it.
Thank you so much.